She slapped me in front of 400 people, told security to remove the worthless employee. 90 seconds later, the chairwoman of the board walked through those doors and told the entire room who I actually was. What you're about to hear isn't a revenge story. It's a story about what people show you when they think you have nothing, and what happens when a room finally understands what you've been carrying the whole time. My name is Marcus Carter, and on the night my wife slapped me at my own company's anniversary gala, every person in that ballroom believed I was a warehouse operations manager. Nobody. Replaceable. Beneath notice. That was by design. If stories like this one, about patience, betrayal, and the kind of justice that takes its time, mean something to you, take a second and subscribe. I bring you a story like this every week. You won't want to miss the next one. Now let me take you back, because to understand what happened at that gala, you have to understand how a man ends up invisible inside the very company he built. My father drove trucks for 31 years. Not the same truck, not the same company. He never got to keep anything long enough for that. But every night at dinner, he'd talk about it, the dream of it, a fleet with his name stitched somewhere on the side, not for the glory, for the control, for never having to hand his schedule to a dispatcher who saw him as a number on a route sheet. He didn't live to see it. Heart attack, 58 years old, sitting in a truck stop outside Amarillo, waiting on a load. That never came. I was 26. I took the $11,000 he'd managed to save and the small settlement from a company that didn't want to admit fault, and I built something. Not a monument. A working answer to a question he never got to ask out loud. 12 years later, Harlow Freight Systems moved cargo through 14 states. 600 trucks for 1,000 employees. A company worth more than either of us had ever let ourselves imagine. I put every share of it into a trust, named it after him, the Elias Carter Family Trust. Then I stepped back from the public face of the company I'd built. People inside knew there was a founder somewhere, a name on paperwork. Nobody could tell you what he looked like. Nobody could point to a desk and say, "That's him." That was deliberate. I'd watched too many companies rot from the top down. Executives who performed integrity in the boardroom and abandoned it the second nobody important was watching. I want to know what Harlow actually was. Not what it said. It was in a shareholder letter. So I took a job. Warehouse operations manager. Mid-level. Enough access to see everything. Not enough title for anyone to watch their mouth around me. Diane Osei chaired the board. She was the only person inside the company who knew what I actually was. We had one encrypted channel, checked twice a day. No official acknowledgement ever in any meeting in any room with more than the two of us in it. She ran the public face of Harlow. I watched what happened underneath it. For years, that arrangement just worked. Then Ethan Brooks became chief operating officer. I met Vanessa at a mutual friend's wedding. 4 years before Ethan ever set foot in our building. She was warm, funny in a way that snuck up on you. She had opinions about everything, and she'd defend every single one of them like her life depended on it. I liked that about her immediately. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. When I told her I worked warehouse operations for a mid-sized logistics company, she didn't blink. She was building her own career in marketing. She had no interest in being anyone's dependent. We signed a prenup. Her request. Clean lines, separate assets. I respected her for asking. The first 3 years were good. Genuinely good. Then Harlow's marketing department hired her. It didn't happen all at once. It happened the way rust happens. Slow. At the edges. By the time you notice the shape has changed, most of the damage is already done. She started staying later. Started talking about certain co-workers with a reverence sheet. Never used for me. She mentioned Ethan Brooks for the first time about 5 months after she started. Ethan closed the Ferris account single-handedly. Ethan gave a keynote today that had the room standing. Ethan says I should be running my own division within 2 years. I didn't think much of it. Then she started mentioning the truck I drove. 12 years old. Still ran fine. She started mentioning the neighborhood we lived in. Started comparing our life, quietly, to a standard she'd picked up somewhere I couldn't see. The discrepancies weren't obvious. Not to anyone who wasn't already looking. I was already looking. 17 subcontractor agreements flagged in my quarterly review. Shell trucking firms. No fleet registered under their name. No identities. No verifiable freight history. Anywhere in the industry. Payments ran through a regional logistics account. That account reported directly to Ethan's division. It bypassed our standard two-signature approval through an exemption Ethan had personally requested 9 months earlier. Something close to $36 million moved through those Shell contracts over 16 months. Small enough, each time, to stay under the automatic review threshold. I pulled every document. Twice. Then I called Diane. "How sure are you?" she asked. "Sure enough to need a second set of eyes," I said. "Not sure enough to move yet." 2 days later, a woman named Billionaire knocked on my office door. 24 years old. Compliance analyst. 18 months with the company. She had the look of someone who'd rehearsed what she was about to say so many times the words had worn smooth. She placed a folder on my desk and didn't sit down. "I copied these 2 weeks ago," she said. "I've been trying to decide what to do with them ever since." "What changed your mind?" She was quiet for a second. "My little brother's tuition is due in 6 weeks. I know exactly what I'm risking sitting here." She looked up. "But I haven't slept right since I found them." Figured that had to mean something. Inside the folder, wire transfer records. 9 of them, matching the Shell contract side. Already flagged. 2 internal emails where Ethan's assistant confirmed payment on invoices that corresponded to no actual freight movement anywhere in our system. Priya told me Ethan had already pushed 2 other employees out. One resigned after raising a question in a team meeting. The other got placed on a performance plan within a week of flagging a discrepancy to a manager who answered directly to Ethan. "He uses marketing to bury it," she said. "Every time there's a bad quarter number, there's a press release that same week. New partnership, new expansion. It moves the conversation." I looked at her. "You know who signs off on those releases?" She nodded slowly. "Your wife runs final approval on all external comms." I told her I'd handle it. Told her to talk to no one. I walked her out. Came back. Sat with those documents a long time. I didn't know yet if Vanessa understood what she was signing off on. I needed to find out before I did anything I couldn't undo. That night, I asked her about Ethan. Kept it light. Said I'd seen his name on some paperwork. Wanted to understand his role better. She set her fork down. "Why are you asking about Ethan?" "Professional curiosity." "You don't have professional curiosity about people above your pay grade. You never have." She picked the fork back up. "Is this about how much I talk about him? I think he might be involved in something that could hurt you. I need you to be careful what you sign without reading first." She went still. "You're serious?" "Not a question." "Yes. You manage a warehouse floor, Marcus." She pushed her chair back. "Ethan runs 400 people, and the board's already talking about him as the next COO track. Please, don't make this into something it isn't." She went to bed. I stayed at the table a long time. The next morning, I found my work login had been used at 11:52 the night before. From a device registered to Vanessa's company profile. 9 folders accessed. 2 copied to an external drive. I didn't confront her. I called Diane. "She accessed your files." She accessed files someone told her were necessary to access. "What do you want to do?" I thought it through. If I revealed myself now, Ethan would have lawyers in the room before. We had the full chain of evidence locked down. The money trail was solid. The chain of who instructed what and when needed more time. Nothing yet, I told her. But I want a full mirror on every device in my office. Anything touched gets backed up to the board server in real time. "Already running," she said. "Started 11 minutes ago." I closed my laptop. Looked at the ceiling a long time. I built Harlow, so people like Billionaire would have somewhere safe to land. So the ones doing the quiet, unglamorous work of keeping things honest wouldn't have to face the consequences of it alone. I married Vanessa because I believed she understood something. That what a person does, when nobody important is watching, is the truest version of who they are. I've been right about the company. I've been wrong about her. I wasn't ready to say that out loud. Not yet. So I went to work the next day and kept moving. Priya's termination hit the system on a Tuesday morning. Effective immediately. Grounds, unauthorized manipulation of financial records, breach of data protocol. I read it twice. Pulled the attached file. A clean, tidy package of timestamps and access logs, all pointing straight at her. Too clean. The kind of clean that takes real effort. Ethan had decided the investigation was closing in. So he did what men like Ethan always do. When they're cornered, he found someone smaller to stand in front of him. The notice had routed through marketing for internal distribution. Vanessa's signature sat at the bottom of it. I went to her office. She ended a call when she saw my face. Pull up the Nair termination, I said. She turned to her screen like it was routine. It came through HR. Ethan's office flagged it. Urgent. I processed it with a morning batch. Did you read it? I read the summary. Billionaire is the person who brought me evidence of financial fraud. She's being fired for finding it. Vanessa looked at me, steady. That's a serious accusation. I know what it is. HR reviewed it. It went through proper channels. Vanessa. Her voice dropped, not with concern, with the exhaustion of somebody who'd had this exact conversation too many times already. I don't know what theory you're chasing or why you're so fixated on Ethan, but I'm not overriding a process termination because my husband has a hunch. Suspend it 72 hours, long enough to verify. I don't have authority to suspend a process termination. You have authority to flag it for review. You know that. Silence. Then, and what do I tell Ethan's office when they ask why? There it was. Now what do I tell HR? Now what do I tell legal? Ethan's office. I left. Nothing left worth saying in that room. That afternoon, Ethan moved to the next phase. IT security, which reported to a director who reported to Ethan, ran what got called internally a routine systems audit. By end of day, the transaction logs Priya had referenced were overwritten on the primary server. A new file appeared under my name, timestamped 5 weeks earlier, suggesting accessed and altered the same records Priya stood accused of touching. Competent work. Not perfect. Competent enough to manufacture doubt. And in a legal proceeding, doubt is often all you need. I forwarded everything to Diane. Her reply came back in 3 minutes. None of this touches the board server. Everything he's deleting is already mirrored. He's cleaning a room that has cameras in the ceiling. I want to move at the gala, I told her. Why wait that long? Because by the gala, he'll be publicly announced as the next COO. Confident the evidence is gone. Completely unprepared for what's waiting. A man who thinks he's already won stops watching for the thing that ends him. 2 more days, I said. Your call, she said. I'll have a board assembled and federal investigators on standby. I found a recording by accident. I placed a small recorder in the 3rd floor conference room 2 weeks earlier after my laptop got accessed. Standard precaution. I checked the files every few days. Mostly scheduling calls. One vendor meeting that ran 40 minutes long for no reason. The file from the night of Priya's termination ran 38 minutes. The first 18 were Ethan, walking Vanessa through the situation with the smooth efficiency of a man delivering a quarterly report, framing it as a necessary correction, a liability that needed handling before the gala. He told her my involvement was a problem that would resolve itself. Told her that once his appointment as COO was formalized, he'd move her into the director role she'd been chasing. Then he left, and Vanessa made a phone call. I almost stopped the recording there. Something told me not to. The voice on the other end belonged to a friend of hers. I met her twice at dinners. It started small. The week ahead. Then Vanessa said she was tired. Not tired the way you say it when you need sleep. Tired the way you sound when something's been pressing on you so long you can't remember what it felt like before it arrived. She said she was tired of coming home to a man who never wanted more than what he already had. Tired of standing in rooms where people asked what her husband did and having to figure out how to make warehouse operations manager sound like something. Tired of being the only one in the marriage who understood that the world measures people by what they build, what they're seen to have. She said, Marcus is good. He's genuinely a good person. Then she said that wasn't enough anymore. that she'd spent 5 years trying to want the life she had, and she was done pretending she still did. "What are you going to do?" her friend asked. "After the gala," she said. "Once Ethan's announcement is official, I'm asking Marcus for a divorce. I don't want to waste any more time." I sat in my truck in the parking garage a long time after that recording ended. I want to be honest about what I felt because I think it matters. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even grief yet. It was the stillness that settles over you when something you suspected finally becomes something you know. When the last small possibility that you were wrong closes, and what's left is just the shape of the truth sitting there, waiting for you to look at it directly. She wasn't leaving because Ethan had manipulated her. She was leaving because she'd looked at the life we built and decided it wasn't worth keeping. The manipulation just gave her a cleaner exit. The decision had already been hers. I sat with that a while. Then I started the truck and drove back to work. The gala was 2 days out. Ethan made his first move the morning before. A company-wide memo, not cleared through Diane's office, not approved by the board, announcing he'd been selected as the next chief operating officer, formal appointment to follow the anniversary celebration, written with the confidence of a man who believed there was nobody left to contradict him. He redesigned the gala floor plan too. The executive section, front third of the ballroom, restricted to senior leadership and above. My clearance didn't qualify. A security coordinator delivered the updated access protocol to my desk personally, dressed up as routine, meant as a message. I forwarded it to Diane. "Noted," she wrote back. "I'll make sure my seat has a good view of the room." The night of the gala, I arrived early, stayed near the edges. Priya found me about 40 minutes in, moving carefully along the outer wall. She hadn't been invited. Her badge had been deactivated with the termination, but she'd borrowed a guest pass from a former co-worker and come anyway. She pressed a small drive into my hand without stopping, eyes fixed past my shoulder. "Everything's on there," she said quietly. "Full transaction history. The originals before he overwrote them. The email chain from his assistant. Complete backup." I put in my jacket. "You shouldn't have come tonight." "I know." She finally looked at me. "Are you actually going to do something? Or am I just going to lose my job and nothing happens?" "Nothing's going to happen to you," I said. "I need you to trust me for 30 more minutes." She nodded once. Then Ethan's voice cut across the room. He'd seen us. He crossed the floor with 2 security guards behind him, doing it in front of as many people as he could gather. Announced, loud enough for half the room, that Billionaire had trespassed following her termination, and that I appeared to be receiving stolen material from a terminated employee under active investigation. The crowd arranged itself into a circle, watching. Vanessa appeared at his side. I don't know if she'd been near already or came running toward the sound of his voice. Ethan told her I'd been building a case against the company, feeding documents to a disgruntled ex-employee. Said it was exactly the kind of behavior he'd warned her about. Said she needed to decide, right now, where she stood. I looked at her across the space between us. Said her name once. Just that. She reached over and took the drive out of my hand. I let her. Then she looked at me. Really looked for the first time in what felt like months. And she slapped me across the face. The sound carried across the entire ballroom. She dropped the drive on the floor. Ethan stepped forward and crushed it under his shoe. Then he put his arm around her shoulders like a man collecting something he believed he'd earned, and told his security team to remove me from the building. I didn't move. I reached into my jacket and took out my wedding ring. I'd taken it off an hour earlier, standing alone near the garage entrance, after a final message from Diane confirming the board was in position. I hadn't put it back on. Somewhere in that hour, I think I'd already known I wouldn't. I set it down on the nearest table. Not thrown, not dramatic, just set down. Ethan smiled at me. "You're done here," he said. "You were never really here to begin with." I looked at him, then at Vanessa, staring at the ring like she couldn't quite place what she was looking at. "I know," I said. Then I turned toward the entrance, where Diane Osei was walking through the doors with 6 members of the board of directors and 3 federal investigators behind her. Diane didn't rush. That's the first thing I noticed. The quality of her pace crossing that ballroom. Not slow, Not fast, deliberate. The board members spread out behind her without being told to, the way people move. When they rehearse something and know exactly where they're supposed to stand. The federal investigators stayed near the doors, unhurried, watching. Ethan's security team looked at them, then at Ethan, then back. Nobody moved. Diane stopped in front of me, looked at my cheek, still warm, looked at the ring on the table beside me. Then she turned to the room. The board recognizes the founder and controlling shareholder of Harlow Freight Systems. She said, Marcus Carter. The silence that followed was complete. Behind her, the display screen set up for Ethan's announcement came alive. Not with his remarks, with something else. The Elias Carter Family Trust Incorporation papers. The original shareholder registry from 12 years back. The full chain of ownership, trust to holding company, to every subsidiary. Underneath it, and at the center of it, time-stamped, unambiguous, my signature. A photograph of me, at 26, sitting across a folding table in a rented office, signing the papers that started. All of it. I watched the room understand what it was looking at. I watched Ethan's face move through several things at once. Disbelief. Recalculation. Then, the blankness of a man whose plan just collapsed, already sorting through what he could. Salvage. And I watched Vanessa, staring at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. She wasn't doing the math wrong. She was doing it exactly right. The gala she'd chosen to humiliate her husband, I was being held inside a building her. Husband owned. The man she called worthless owned every room in that building, including the one she was standing in. Ethan recovered first. He always recovered fast. It was one of his real talents. These documents are altered, he said, loud enough for the room. This is exactly what I've been saying. He's been building a case against this company for months. Manufacturing. Evidence. The drive you destroyed was a copy, I said. He went still. I made 4, I said. One was in Priya's hands tonight, which you anticipated. One's already in Diane's possession. One uploaded to the board's secure server the same night my laptop was accessed, the night my wife used a password you asked her to take from me. Everything you've done since, the deleted logs, the file with my name on it, all of it, recorded against a clean baseline that already existed before you started cleaning up. I'll let it sit. The 4th copy's been with federal investigators for 48 hours. Ethan looked toward the agents by the door. They looked back with the patient expression of people exactly where they expected to be. He turned to Vanessa. And here's the moment worth describing carefully, because it told the whole room everything it needed to know about who Ethan Brooks actually was. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause to weigh whether she deserved better than what he was about to do. He turned to her the way you turn toward an exit when the building's on fire. She came to me, he said. I want that on the record. The access to his files, the communications she signed off on. That was her initiative. I raised concerns at the time. I have documentation. The room went quiet in a different way than before. Not shock, the quiet of watching. Something confirm itself. Vanessa stood completely still. I couldn't see her face from where I stood, but I watched her. Shoulders, her hands. I watched the exact moment she understood that the man she'd reorganized her whole life around had just handed her over without a second thought. It didn't take long after that. The board voted to remove Ethan from his position while the investigators were still standing in the room. Unanimous. For minutes, he was walked out by 2 federal agents with the kind of efficiency that told you they'd done this before. 3 senior managers who'd processed payments through Ethan's shell accounts without flagging them got placed on immediate suspension pending an independent review. Diane found Priya near the edge of the crowd and brought her forward. I shook her hand in front of the full board and told her the termination was reversed, effective that moment, and that she'd be stepping into a newly created role overseeing internal audit reporting. Straight to the board, not to any one executive. There's a salary adjustment that comes with it, Diane added. Priya nodded slowly. I watched the relief move through her. Not triumphant, just the quiet, worn-out relief of someone who'd done a hard thing and just found out it was worth it. Vanessa found me about 20 minutes later. I let her come to me. I owed her that much, the chance to say whatever she needed to say. She looked different than she had an hour before. Not smaller exactly. More like someone who'd been carrying a performance a long time and had finally set it down and wasn't sure what her own face looked like without it. I didn't know, she said, about who you were. I need you to believe that. I know you didn't. He told me you were working against the company. Against both of us. I thought, she stopped. Started again. I was wrong about him. I understand that now. I understand what I actually was to him. I know that too. Quiet for a moment. If I'd known about the trust, what you built, I would never have treated you the way I did. I looked at her a long time. That's the part you're still not getting, I said. It was never that you didn't know I had money. It's that you decided a man without a title, without a visible kind of success, was someone you were allowed to disrespect. You didn't treat me that way because you were deceived about my net worth. You treated me that way because you'd already decided the version of me you could see wasn't worth the version of yourself you wanted to become. She didn't answer. The problem was never that you didn't know I was wealthy, I said. The problem is what you think about people who aren't. I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was true, and because somewhere underneath everything, I think she already knew it, had probably always known it, and had spent a long time finding ways not to look at it straight on. I left her standing there with it. The divorce went through under the prenup she'd asked for years earlier. Her assets stayed hers. Her professional consequences were separate from mine. The termination came from the board, not from me, because she'd signed off on communication she should have reviewed and passed information to Ethan she should have questioned. She left the building that night without the title, without the marriage, without the future. She'd rebuilt her whole life around chasing. I didn't watch her go. I had other things that needed my attention. Months passed. Ethan Brooks was indicted on 11 counts. Gwaid froth, embezzlement, obstruction, conspiracy. The recovered total came to just over $41 million. The trial didn't take long. The verdict wasn't a surprise to anybody in that courtroom. Harlow built a formal whistleblower protection program after that, legally structured, independently overseen, written directly into our governance documents, so no future executive could quietly take it apart. We rebuilt the approval chain too, spread authority across multiple reporting lines instead of stacking it under one person. Power concentrated in a single set of hands isn't efficiency. It's exposure. I came out publicly as the founder after that. Not because I wanted the attention. I still don't. But because I understood my anonymity had left a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. Men like Ethan find the unlit corners of a company and build something there precisely. Because nobody's watching closely enough. Oversight isn't about control. It's about protection. Priya gave the opening remarks at our first company-wide ethics summit that fall. I asked her before I asked anybody else. Sat in the third row and listened to her talk about those 3 weeks she spent deciding whether to walk into my office. The fear of it. The math she ran on it 100 times. The moment she finally decided that not sleeping was data and she should probably act on it. She was funny about it. Surprised some people. Didn't surprise me at all. Vanessa found work at a smaller firm 2 states over. I didn't track the details. I wasn't angry by then. I just had no interest in the shape of a life I wasn't part of anymore. She made her choices. The consequences were hers to carry. That's not cruelty. That's just what accountability looks like when nobody softens it for you. At the following year's anniversary gala, I stood in the same spot where she'd slapped me. We'd changed the floor plan. No executive section anymore. The room was set up so warehouse staff and dispatch coordinators and junior analysts sat at the same tables as board members. Not as a gesture, as policy. I didn't give a speech about values. Never trusted those speeches. They reach the people who need them least and bounce right off the ones who need them most. Instead, I watched a young dispatch coordinator named Reggie sit at a table with 2 board members, talking with total ease about a routing problem he'd spotted and the fix he had in mind. I watched them lean in, take notes, not performing anything, just listening because the idea was good, and it didn't matter whose badge it came off of. That's what I built this company to be. Not a monument, not a vehicle for one person's ambition. A place where the work is the point and the people doing the work get treated like they're the point too. Here's what I want to leave you with. Money doesn't change who people are. It just takes away the excuse they were using to hide it. Vanessa didn't lose her marriage because she didn't know I was wealthy. She lost it because she'd built a version of the world where people without visible success were acceptable to disrespect, and she applied that standard to the person standing closest to her. Ethan didn't fall because he got caught. He fell because he spent years treating people as tools. And eventually one of those tools, a 24-year-old compliance analyst who hadn't slept in 3 weeks, decided she'd had enough and showed up anyway. Priya didn't succeed because she was fearless. She succeeded because she was afraid, and she showed up anyway. That difference matters more than most people ever stop to notice. The way you treat someone who could do nothing for you, that's the most honest measure of who you actually are. If this story meant something to you, let me know in the comments what part stayed with you the most. Like this video, subscribe for more stories like it every week, and share it with somebody who needs to hear this today.